Okay, good afternoon, good morning, and good evening to everyone, wherever you're joining us from. I'm Vositha Wijenayake, Executive Director of SLYCAN Trust, and I would like to warmly welcome all of you who are joining us today. Most of our participants are joining us from Asia, actually 73%, but we also have a good number from Europe, Africa, and Australia. And then we have a large number of CSOs, CBOs, NGOs joining us, but we also have a good number of policymakers, youth representatives, media and academic and technical people. So yes, that's a good break. And also private sector. So it's a good stakeholder engagement today that we have. And out of all of you, the last question, you seem to be most of you working on biodiversity or a theme related to it, so we can have a good discussion, sharing experiences related to your work as well. So today we have three awesome speakers who have a wealth of knowledge, and I'm sure we'll all learn from them. We have Dr. Bremley Lyngdoh, who's the founder and CEO of Worldview Impact Foundation. Then we have Johanna Loehr, who's a doctoral candidate at Griffith Institute for Tourism. And we have Mr. Sathurusinghe, Anura Sathurusinghe from SLYCAN Trust. He's the director of Ecosystems and Conservation Program. And he was also the Conservator General previously for Sri Lanka. So he has a lot of knowledge forestry and biodiversity work that he's been doing. So in the order of things, Bremley has requested me that he wants to speak as the third speaker. So I will pass the mic first to Mr. Sathurusinghe, and then Johanna, and then Bremley, you can speak that. I hope everyone is okay with that. And I would like to now request Mr. Sathurusinghe to take the floor. Thank you.
Good afternoon, good evening, and good morning to all of you. And thank you very much, Vositha, for giving me the opportunity. So in my presentation, what I'm going to do is just to after this introduction, I would like to talk about a little bit on biodiversity of Sri Lanka, and then the efforts taken by the government as well as the other sectors to conserve it, and try to connect that with the restoration activities plus innovative, at least to some extent, innovative financial solutions. A country like ours, I think it's not that. I mean, you get a lot of this thing, but still, let's try what we can do. And so, with this introduction, I would like to focus on the biodiversity in Sri Lanka, and then the restoration step and possible financial solutions, as I mentioned earlier. Now this is something because now I don't think we can think out of the connection between SDGs, the climate change, food security, biodiversity, and everything. So it's a sort of a network. So it cannot discuss anything without that. So this is the really complex situation. Just to show you this web, like we talk about the poverty, we talk about the food security, we talk about the provision of ecosystem services, and then the biodiversity and various other things. So these are really interconnected. So this is the message I wanted to pass here. And then if you really look at, for us in Sri Lanka, most important thing is ecosystem services, because when we were working on the UN National Red Plus proposal, they again came for a country like Sri Lanka. It was not the carbon credits, but to ensure that all the ecosystem services are secured, because they regulate our water streams, which provides irrigated water for the agriculture, as well as the major hydropower reservoirs. And then with agriculture and the hydropower is connected to food security and even the poverty. So poverty is an important part of it, as well as the food security. So everything is interconnected. So within this scenario, we also know that now Sri Lanka has been placed as the second most vulnerable country in the long-term climate risk index published in 2019. So we have to consider all these scenarios and situations when we really talk about the biodiversity conservation in Sri Lanka and looking at how to overcome all these threats and then the climate change impacts. So I think most of you all are aware that Sri Lanka is a small country, small island nation, but we have significantly high biodiversity if you consider both regional and global scale. And we are within the list of 36 biodiversity hotspots. Sri Lanka, actually this is wet zone of Sri Lanka together with the Western Ghats of India. It is designated as one of the 36 biodiversity hotspots of the world. And also we have the highest species density, which is the number of species present per 10,000 square kilometers per flowering plants, amphibians, reptiles, and mammals in the Asian region. So now we enjoy a high level of biodiversity. And if you look at the species richness in different Sri Lankan flora and fauna, so we have high richness in angiosperms, which is about 20. I mean, this really I'm looking at the number of species as well as comparing that with number of endemics and percentage. So out of our angiosperms, 24.5% are endemics, and out of pteridophytes, it's 13%, and mosses 11%, like liverworts 13%, 13.79%. Those are lower plants, as you all know. And looking at the invertebrate fauna, it is 22%, and vertebrate fauna, it's nearly 30.47%. So that means we have a very good and very large endemism within the species in our country. And recently we looked at where this endemism is, especially the flora, the trees, and we have found that 60% of endemism is found among our lowland wet zone evergreen forest, and 34% is in the montane and lower montane and montane forest, and 6% is moist evergreen forest, especially the dry zone forest, where you get dry zone is somewhere here, the north and the northeast, the area covering 2/3 of the country, where you get comparatively high forest cover. But this is the wet zone, which has high endemism, but less number of forest cover, as well as a highly populated area, and which is where mainly you get fragmented forest patches. And recently, identifying these threats to our forest lands, we try to identify the drivers of deforestation and forest degradation as a part of our National Red Plus program. So these are the drivers we identified in our study, and the size of each arrow indicates the magnitude of the problem. Now, for example, as of today, the infrastructure development projects are the biggest threat to the existence of our forest ecosystems. So secondly, agriculture ventures, and thirdly, there is land policy, and to a certain extent land policy, political interference, and poor coordination among policies and institutions. And encroachments are also taking place in a sort of a considerable manner. Especially even the localized degradation is happening. So population growth, agriculture mechanization, commercialization are the other drivers we have identified. And similarly, we were trying to identify the measures to halt this deforestation and degradation drivers. So again, this is through large number of stakeholder consultations. we came across that forest policy and protected area management needs to be strengthened. That will be the most important measure. And then environmental policy and laws, community dependence, public pressure and awareness, and then home guards and migration for employment being another reason, and also the off-farm employment are being the measures to hold this GNG. So with this, we try to integrate that with ecosystem-based adaptation interventions. And because everything, we found that everything is bound with rural communities, smallholder farmers, and then coastal communities, and various types of actions. So we try to identify EBA interventions, ecosystem-based adaptation interventions, for each and every impact. And we listed number of interventions like restoration of vegetation, cover protection and restoration of coral reefs, protection and restoration of mangroves, and promotion of home gardens and trees outside forest as preventive interventions which we could practice through these EBA interventions. And coming to the various practices, so the first interventions of research level trying to restore natural forest was started in 1994 in pilot scale with the eminent professors attached to University of Peradeniya, because those days the pinus plantation, which was established in and around natural forest, were really criticized by a lot of environmentalists as well as the local people, saying that pine is an exotic, it looks exotic, and also it absorbs lots of water from the ground. And the reason for establishing pine plantations in those days, I think in 60s and early 70s, keeping the objective that to upgrade and improve the soil, acidic soil in abandoned tea and rubber land. So it was a donor-funded project, and lots of abandoned tea and rubber lands which are covered with kakilla fern were used to these plantations, establish these plantations. And there was a stage that nothing else could be planted under the pine plantation because there was a thick mat of pine needles allocated on the ground. So by that time, two professors, husband and wife, Professor Nimala and Sathurusinghe, they opened up some gaps in the pine plantations and started introducing some local species. They had conducted a number of research trials and introducing various species which are in the natural forest. And so after, you can see, even after like 7 years, now the native species are doing well and reaching the canopy. So these are in between pine rows. They had opened up number of spaces like allocating sunlight to penetrate through the canopy of pinus in different width of sample plots. So this was good guidelines for the forest department to start up its own plots, restoration plots, but it took a long time for the department to get funding from the government to look at this type of activity, because mainly the funding provided from the government was focusing on the industrial timber production, and it was totally dedicated to industrial timber plantations, but not for the natural forest restoration. So the department started this in 2014. And sorry, now this is another plot of the same. This is in mid-country in Tanna. They had started this in 2004. And now this is again in between pine plantations. So the 1 or 2 lines have been cleared, and then they are planted with suitable species. And then so after 5 years, you can see the local species, native species, are doing very well. And this is another one. This is in Kalutara district, Diakotakanda Badrolia, which is the trial is being conducted by another NGO, Wildlife and Nature Protection Society of Sri Lanka. And this is this also happened to be a highly degraded land caught with this Cachilla fern, and they have cleared up the area and terraces, because this is sort of a slopy land, and then planted with various pioneer species like Gliricidia, and then planted with the native species. So anyway, sorry. So with this, yes. So with this, the department started its restoration program in 2015, looking at 4,000 hectares, and then by 2019 it has completed 10,000 hectares of restoration of natural forest in various parts of the country, both in wet, dry, and intermediate zones. Some are really good, and some are not that good, because it depends on the site condition and species you have selected, and the maintenance. So based on, because the research, all the research were conducted in the wet zone, but of course the department didn't have any experience with the dry zone, where you get lots of lands available for restoration activities, because the wet zone lands are small in scale, small patches, and they have the good, comparatively good and rich soil, and even the climatic conditions are much favorable than the dry zone. So, but on the other hand, the lands available for restoration, forest restoration, are largely found in the dry zone, and at the moment the department has identified 90,000 odd hectares for these restoration purposes. And they have been trying a number of models. Now they work with the private sector in small scale, because the private sector is interested in, is coming with as their CSR projects, and they sign MOUs with the forest department, and there are about 5 or 6 private companies working with the department based on an MOU signed for 5-year period. So they deposit money with the department, and they have the right to monitor jointly and also participate in activities, forestry and silvicultural activities jointly. At the same time, based on the paper advertisement published by the department, number of community-based organizations. Now, for example, the best example is a Catholic church as well as one Buddhist monastery. They are engaged in restoration activities, which is really a positive dimension for the forest department. So, not in large scale, but of course, like they started with 10-hectare plots, and then they also request the department to expand these activities because I mean, they don't expect anything out of it, but of course they really, for their this thing, the commitment to the country, they are engaged in these activities. So this is apart from these private sector organizations, a number of community organizations. I think about right now there are about 6 or 7 organizations are engaged with the government in restoration forest. And the most important thing is mangrove, because mangroves are really important for our country, because since we are surrounded by the sea, and especially the importance of mangrove was realized when we had last tsunami in 2004. So, but right now, according to the recent figures I got from the Forest Department, we have about 19,000 mangrove areas around the country, and some of those are really degraded. Some needs to be reforested, and some need to be 100% reforested, and some needs to be restored. Most of the mangrove blocks in the wet zone been disturbed or destroyed for the shifting cultivation about 20 years back, and also another reason for the destruction of the salterns, as well as in some urban areas, people do encroachment for housing and also the fuel wood production. And there are, again, including SLYCAN, there are a number of organizations, NGOs and community organizations like Sudisha Small Fisheries Development people, as well as the government, the Forest Department, are involved in mangrove restoration. But the department has now a target of 450 hectares. They have started in 2019, and as per my discussion with the department, I came to know that in 2019 they have planted 380 odd mangrove plantations, and they have collaborated with one of the universities in Sri Lanka, as well as National Aquatic Resource Agency, NARA, and getting their technical know-how. And recently, I was told that they have collaborated with CSIRO, Commonwealth Scientific Research and Industrial Organization, Australia, which is providing technical knowledge as well as equipment to monitor the growth rates and carbon sequestration of selected mangrove patches. I was told that they have identified 5 sites in one of the driest districts in Sri Lanka, which is Putlam. And also they have produced, they have produced about 798,000 seedlings, out of which have been planted in these areas. So the sites which are selected for mangrove restoration are mainly the abandoned stream farms and then abandoned salterns, as well as other areas which were deteriorated due to encroachments and various other human interventions. So third activity, or the restoration activity, the Sri Lanka is looking at is the development of tree resources outside forest. We call it TOF, or trees outside forest technically. There are not only the Forest Department, even lots of NGOs and community organizations. They, throughout the year, they conduct a number of tree planting programs by providing plant material, seedlings, seeds, and various other things. And also the department also conduct training programs on tree management. So this is really important for Sri Lanka because 40% of our timber requirement is coming from our home gardens, which is specifically we have this what you call the Canadian home garden, which is well recognized, I think regionally and globally well recognized home garden because it produces the timber, spices, and various other food crops, and also it resembles natural forest because you get lots of strata in it, and so you get emergence, canopy, and then the understory, and even the ground layer being managed by the landowner by planting number of food crops which can survive within this limited sunlight conditions. So coming to the home gardens again, so the average home garden size in Sri Lanka is vary from the wet zone you get about 0.4%, 4 hectares, and the dry zone you get larger home gardens which is about 2 hectares, and you get about 54 to 419 trees per hectare, the stocking. And it provides, as I mentioned earlier, it provides about 41% of the total timber demand and 28% of world demand of the country. And right now, there's a risk because due to the introduction of new settlements as well as the increase in population, the home garden fragmentation is taking place because home gardens are also considered as very good biodiversity corridors between two forests because it carries a multi-purpose trees, large number of different trees, which provides even fruits and various other edible products for wildlife too. So these are the most common tree species you find in home garden: coconut, rubber, jack, arecanut, mahogany, and various other fruit species like mango, and timber species like eucalyptus and tea. And this is my last slide, which I would like to look at the financial solutions. Of course, these are not innovative ones, but of course, the development partners as the Green Climate Fund and the World Bank, they are helping Sri Lanka in promoting restoration in various ways. And also we tried, like 5 to 6 years back, we tried payments on ecosystem services to introduce to Sri Lanka because especially now the electricity is hydroelectricity is provided due to the protection of upper water catchments in the mountainous area. So there's a direct link between the electricity generation, hydropower generation, as well as the forest protection. So that was one idea which had been, even it went up to the cabinet level. Then of course, no firm decision was taken. But of course, I think the people are trying to get this done. And also the carbon markets, but this is not happening in large scale. One thing is the forest carbon in Sri Lankan context, it's negligible when you look at the price of carbon today. But of course, the private sector, there had been a number of efforts to introduce voluntary carbon marks in small scale. And the involvement of other sectors, especially the private sector, NGOs and communities, still an option because, for example, one idea came out of when we were discussing this restoration funding for the restoration. Now there are fruit tree growers. Now, for example, big companies like mango, banana, and various other crops. I mean, in this country, the shifting cultivators, they rent out their land. It's not really their land, but of course, they are inherited land from the government. They have rented out these lands for food cultivators, especially the banana and mangoes. So the department was thinking, I mean, because that whether how to incorporate forestry with this agroforestry with these people, and sort of a combination introducing timber trees as well as fruit trees for them to earn money from fruit species, and then for the country to get benefit from improving its forest cover and ecosystem services. So even for the NGO and also for the private sector, now there's another innovative thing happening, because one of the state companies, the state sector company, tea state company, have come forward and I mean, they are giving their land, tea land, to establish a jungle corridor between two very important forests. So it's sort of a, I think, a 100-hectare corridor to be established between two natural forests, which is really important for the wet zone, because as I mentioned earlier, this wet zone forests are shrinking right now. So the connectivity is really important for wildlife to move from one forest to the other. So this is a very innovative offer from this private sector organization, and the department, I think, together with this tea holders, are working on this too. And specifically, we look at the community living in the peripheries of natural forest protected areas. While improving their livelihoods, we are trying to get their assistance to protect and rehabilitate the degraded forest in the vicinity on the periphery of the villages. So it's nothing new, but of course we are trying to make it more sustainable, because in most of the cases the project approach is not is limited to the project period, but of course we are trying to find out innovative ways and means to get the community involved. So with this, I conclude my presentation, and I would like to acknowledge Professor Nimal and Savitri Gunatilaka for sharing their information and slides on the restoration which they had conducted in Singharaja and two other places. And also I received a lot of material from Mr. Nishant Sathurusinghe from the Forest Department, who is looking at this mangrove restoration activities. Thank you.
Wonderful presentation. I think we learned a lot. And now we'll take the next presenter, and we will move to the question and answer session after that. I'm not going to take time, and I'll Ms. Johanna Loehr to, I hope I pronounced your name right. Please present, and we'll start your presentation now. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me today. My name is Johanna Loehr, and I'm a PhD candidate at the Griffith Institute for Tourism. My research focuses on reducing climate change risk to destinations in Vanuatu holistically. So my background is really in sustainable tourism and not so much in conservation or biodiversity. Today I want to talk to you about what role tourism may play in adaptation solutions that benefit ecosystem health. And we've just heard a really great presentation on ecosystem-based adaptation, so I'm sure you're all aware of what that is. So why tourism? Tourism is set to help meet the Sustainable Development Goals, including action on climate, and destinations and countries around the world rely on tourism economically. Tourism is favorable as an economic development option, as it provides low barriers to enter the market, and it attracts foreign investment and spending in areas that may not otherwise have the option or resources to develop industry. Sorry, I should have opened that. However, tourism is a resource-intense industry, and it is increasingly questioned whether it actually delivers net benefits to host communities, including their environment. So tourism heavily relies on it and interacts with the natural environment, including environmental attractions, resources, specific environmental conditions such as weather. And obviously, the communities in destinations also heavily rely on and interact with the natural environment. And so those elements form a destination system. So in a lot of areas, especially small island developing states and other destinations, coastal areas, those destination systems are heavily impacted by the effects of climate change. Given the constraints or the resource constraints that are faced by islands, especially small island developing states, coupled with the high dependence on intact ecosystems, effective adaptation measures in tourism need to work with nature rather than against them. So we've heard some examples just before in the presentation. Ecosystems such as mangroves, dune systems, and coral reefs provide important buffers to coastal communities and tourism destinations, tourism assets, and so forth. So therefore, it should be in the interest of tourism to help maintain those ecosystem services on which the sector as well as the communities depend. So really, ecosystem-based adaptation, therefore, is highly relevant to destinations in order to address the risk of climate change. Interestingly, despite its relevance, the concept of ecosystem-based adaptation is still fairly new to the tourism sector. In saying that some operators do engage in initiatives that can be classified as ecosystem-based adaptation unknowingly, but the concept as such is still fairly new. So really the question then is, why should tourism invest in and implement ecosystem-based adaptation? And to answer that question and to make a strong case, we need to understand the benefits to tourism, including the wider destination. And that's basically what my, or part of my research has looked at. So I have conducted some of my PhD research in Vanuatu, and in particular an outer island in the south called Tanna Island. And so Tanna Island is an emerging destination. It is known for its strong custom culture, and the subsistence economy is also still very strong, which means that communities heavily rely on healthy ecosystems. On Tanna, there are currently two independent initiatives to create marine protected areas that are driven by tourism operators or communities that are involved in tourism. And so these communities, or these two case studies, sites, the first one is a development of a larger marine protected area that encompasses the reef of 5 communities, so it's quite large. The main motivation here is to counteract some of the declines of the local marine environment and to reduce community vulnerability to climate change. The implementation of ecosystem-based adaptation there is part of a wider EBA in the Pacific project, and therefore it receives logistical and financial support through regional organizations. However, the local leadership and action stems from the owner of a local bungalow operator and the community which are engaged in tourism. The second case study site, the situation is that tourism operators that are part of a local tourism association have come together and are in the process of establishing a marine protected area in front of their businesses. The main motivation here is conservation of the marine ecosystem for the benefits of tourism, and addressing climate change risk, which is a concern to the operators and the local community, remains an unrecognized co-benefit of that activity. So to analyze the data, I applied systems thinking. So I looked at this case studies holistically to account for the interconnectedness of tourism as an economic activity, the natural environment as a source of ecosystem services, and the activities of the local community. From stakeholder consultation, I identified a range of flow-on effects from the marine protected area that is supported by tourism, and the flow-on effects that are created to the wider destination, and then also the flow-on effects from tourism to that ecosystem, basically, or the initiative of ecosystem-based adaptation. And so the results show that, first of all, some of the benefits are clearly strengthening or a strengthened ecosystem. Obviously, creating marine protected areas and ecosystem-based adaptation, as I'm sure you all know, provides conservation opportunities, and for tourism it enhances the natural attractiveness of the destination if the health of that ecosystem is maintained. By strengthening that natural buffer, it reduces the exposure of the coastline and tourism infrastructure that is located there. So the second really benefit is an opportunity to engage with the local community. There's increasing awareness of the traditional knowledge and practices, such as the taboo areas or taboo times, that now really become important, and there's an opportunity to link that traditional knowledge to those new practices of ecosystem-based adaptation. That's quite important, not only to engage community and create community ownership, but also because that knowledge is often lost when people start working in tourism and shift away from a subsistence economy. There's also obviously an opportunity for education, but also employment. So by protecting the natural resources, business opportunities emerge, and especially in that case for tourism, and that leads to employment and really diversifies livelihoods. So with strengthening the reef, there's opportunities for snorkeling tourism. There's also a little diving school, or one of the resorts tries to sort of maintain that and grow that. But also by strengthening those ecosystems, there's an opportunity for the local communities to create businesses linked to tourism, such as restaurants. They can sell local products, make souvenirs, and so forth. And then obviously there is also benefits in terms of funds that tourism generates. So tourism generates important cash income in areas where the cash economy is not very strong, and therefore it provides an important resource to invest in adaptation. So on Tanna Island, tourism supports the implementation of the marine protected area as an ecosystem-based adaptation in a number of ways. So clearly through direct sort of financial support, but also, and that's quite important and often maybe overlooked, through in-kind support. And that takes the form of on-ground leadership, community engagement, trying to convincing neighboring communities to become part of this and join the initiative, communication with a range of stakeholders, and education, and that includes the local community, but also visitors, so really enhancing awareness. They provide administrative support, and that's linked to applying for the marine protected area to be recognized with authorities. Tourism operators often have the capacity and links to institutions, and then engaging with government agencies. So they really play an important role and can support that initiative. So, and altogether, those 4 different types of capital that can be created through ecosystem-based adaptation and through ecosystem-based adaptation being implemented through tourism, obviously also reduce climate change risk. And so the great thing is that ecosystem or healthy ecosystems may provide these benefits not only during times of extreme climatic events, but for the long run, in between events, and those ecosystems grow stronger over time. My research has also identified a number of constraints to implement ecosystem-based adaptation, and I am aware of time, so I don't want to go into a lot of detail here, but I'm sharing this presentation with everyone, so if there's questions, we can go back to that. So just one example, really, it needs to be acknowledged that destinations face a range of pressures, not only pressures from climate change. And so by implementing an ecosystem-based approach or initiative like a marine protected area, they need to be recognized. So there's strong population growth and also pressure from tourism. And so really the ecosystem-based adaptation needs to go hand in hand with other approaches that support ecosystem-based adaptation, such as sustainable business practices, pollution needs to be reduced, education and awareness, and so forth. So I'm just not going to go into detail with the rest of them, but we can come back to that later if you like, or you can look at that in your own time later on. So really, to conclude, or some points for you to take away are that the results have shown that if the constraints that I didn't go into a lot of detail, but that you may have seen, if these are identified and addressed, ecosystem-based adaptation implemented through tourism has the potential to create multiple benefits for destinations, and that really creates a strong value proposition for tourism to invest and implement those activities. So the benefits include reduced climate change risks through enhanced ecosystem health, but also an increase in natural, human, social and financial capitals, and that leads to the increase in resilience of the broader destination and also well-being. So therefore, ecosystem-based adaptation provides the tourism industry with an anticipatory approach to deal with the long-term changes in a very high uncertain climate. So that's really a big plus. The results also provide an indication of what the negative knock-on effects might be if the destination fails to maintain ecosystem health. So I didn't go into detail there, but just from looking at some of the flow-on effects, if they don't occur, tourism can actually create some negative impacts. And this is quite important. So like I mentioned earlier, ecosystem-based adaptation is still a fairly new concept in tourism, but it is important that the industry understands that this is a viable and very useful approach to adaptation, because if ecosystem-based adaptation projects are implemented now, they can really, or have the opportunity to influence future development, for example, by making sure land is set aside, for example, in the coastal zone for revegetation or protection, and also in terms of leasing of land. So often in tourism, coastal land is leased to tourism, to investors to create tourism businesses, resorts, and so forth. And there's an opportunity to then make, conservation or initiatives linked to ecosystem-based adaptation part of those leasing agreements. So, and then finally, if done right, tourism can actually act as an economic activity that supports ecosystem-based adaptation and therefore increase resilience of ecosystems and the communities, in addition to offering livelihoods. Thank you. That was all from me, so I'll just go back. Thank you.
Interesting, learned a lot. To others who have a lot of questions, probably to Johanna and Mr. Sathurusinghe both, please write down your questions or keep them in mind. We'll open the floor for questions after Bremley's presentation. So, Bremley, if you're ready, yeah, you clear up.
Oh, well, thank you so much, guys. Thank you, Vositha, and thank you, Dennis, for loading up the videos. So I'm not going to share any slides because I think the system might crash because the internet is so slow here. So I'm just going to tell you some stories. So I wish I was back in Sri Lanka right now. I'm just enjoying all these pictures that our first presenter shared. You know, it's amazing. I had the opportunity of coming there in 1999, working in a beautiful farm near Adams Peak called Paradise Farm, and then went on to Mona Ragila to restore ecosystems there. I mean, I loved it. I would love to come back. So currently, I'm stuck in Northeast India. Came here from London on March 11, and we were going to ride motorcycles with 10 international riders for 1,000 miles from Northeast India to Bhutan, up to the Himalayas and back. A program called Ride East to raise money for supporting social entrepreneurs and guys who are working on ecosystem restoration and organic farmers here. But obviously, COVID-19 was following us, and all governments started imposing lockdown, and so did our Prime Minister here, Mr. Modi. So we have 1.3 billion people under lockdown in India, as you all are in your respective countries. But anyway, thanks to internet, even though it's slow, it still works, so we can share stories and projects. I'm here working with farmers. And I'm working on a large-scale restoration of ecosystem, including cloud forests. And my journey started here from my homeland in Northeast India in the state of Meghalaya, where we're working with indigenous people, different tribes in different states. There are 7 states is part of the world, close to the border of Bhutan and Burma and Bangladesh and Nepal and even China on the top. So we have 5 countries surrounding us in this part of India. It's a biodiverse hotspot with around 250 tribes, and we have thousands of species of birds. We have the Royal Bengal tiger here, the single-horned rhinoceros, Hitler gibbons. Amazing. This is where, you know, the Jungle Book was born. So anyway, to tell you about this story, I was invited to come to Sri Lanka, where I'm going to show you the little film, which was made by MTV back in 2009, and then learned from what the farmers were doing in Sri Lanka to then bring it back home to Northeast India to look at integrated agroforestry systems with livestock integration, to look at scaling different livelihood opportunities in the context of preventing large-scale deforestation and addressing poverty reduction at the same time. And then in 2012, when the government of Burma opened its boundaries to the world, my colleagues who were then working in Burma, who left Sri Lanka, asked me, said, you've been working on restoring ecosystems in the mountains, in the cloud forest, can you help us with mangroves? So I had no clue of marine ecosystems before, so I said, it doesn't matter, let's go and learn. So since 2012, fast forward now to 2020, it's been 8 years, we have 9.5 million mangrove trees planted with ground troopers, 250 people on the ground, 25% women, who are just, you know, amazing. So the goal is to now restore 1 billion trees in the next 10 years. Including other neighboring countries, including Bangladesh, India, Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, and maybe even back to Sri Lanka. So the goal is to tell the story. You know, I come from the Himalayan foothills here, where the glaciers are melting, and we have a lot of deforestation happening, a lot of topsoil runoff. We're losing a lot of flora and fauna, we're losing a lot of species, and our rivers are getting flooded with silt and flash flood rains, and then contaminating our waters and our streams. There are a lot of plastics, and it lands up into the Bay of Bengal, the Andaman Sea, and into the Indian Ocean, contaminate all marine ecosystems. And I can even see plastics wrapped around the mangrove trees and stunning their growth, so it's really sad. So having said that, I think what the presenters have shared is very important to look at the financing mechanisms to really scale up these little projects that cool people are doing in the small communities around the world. We need to achieve scale and aggregate this, or else we were just doing piecemeal. We can never achieve our targets by 2030. Frankly, I don't even know if we're going to hit the Sustainable Development Goals, given what's happening now with the economic crisis and COVID-19 and so on and so forth. So unless and until we can work together in collaboration, bring together all these amazing large-scale ecosystem restoration projects, bundle them up together, approach the World Bank or the Green Climate Fund, or the Global Environment Facility, or the IUCN, or the Land Degradation Authority Fund, pull all the money together in one box and execute, because there's too many red tapes out there for little guys here and there to even apply for funding. They get overwhelmed and inundated with what I call information tsunami. So let me take you to Sri Lanka, to 2009, and then the journey started there from London, and then I came to India, and the second video tells you the story of how I traveled from Northeast India and then to Burma, and then I'll tell you a little more what we're trying to do with financing for climate change using blockchain, ledger technologies, and so on and so forth. Over to you, Dennis.
My clan are the caretakers of the Lyngdoh sacred forest in Meghalaya, India, so really taking care of the trees is in my blood. But all this seems so far away from London. I need to be here to get my social enterprise going. We're going to plant millions of trees starting from 7 countries to fight climate change. I've got to get investors to get my plans underway. I know it's worth it, but sometimes I feel so disconnected from where it's all happening. I really need to get back on the road, get back in touch with why I'm doing this. It's all starting here in Sri Lanka. We've got one tree nursery going. I haven't seen it yet, but I can imagine it.
Hey, elephant boy!
Rubber trees grow fast here.
I'm like Spider-Man, spinning my web.
First we plant them, then when they're 5 years old, we'll be able to tap them and make things like surgical gloves and condoms out of the rubber.
Oh boy, it smells really bad.
The trees will absorb carbon from the atmosphere, and the rubber will give jobs to the people here. So you're fighting climate change and poverty. At least that's how it works in theory.
We're off to our little nursery. This is the first time where I'm going there, so it's very exciting. This is the base, this is the launch pad. Wow, it's a nice place.
This is what I've been dreaming about. Actually seeing it happen.
After a long time. Nice meeting you, Raju.
These seedlings are like my babies.
How old are these? 2 weeks? 1 week old.
It's only a few seedlings now, but eventually there'll be millions of trees. And not just in Sri Lanka. We want to do organic plantations in at least 6 countries, including India. My heart is set on making it happen in India. I want to go home. My clan's sacred forest is one of the only forests that's still standing here. All the trees around it have been cut down, and you know, this used to be the rainiest place on earth. But now, with no trees around, it's like a desert. That's why it's important for me to plant here. Getting the plantations going in India is going to be much harder. I have to convince the local chiefs to let us plant trees on their land. If they don't agree, the whole project could fail. And I really don't want that.
Finally home, sweet home. Hi, Mommy. I gotta prepare myself, just got a little time.
I'm really nervous because I think it's going to be really hard to make the chiefs work together. I really hope I can make this take off.
First of all, I want to take this opportunity and thanking each and every one of you for coming to this first meeting. The governing structure in the center.
The chiefs are interested, but it will take a lot of trust for us to work together. They're a bit worried because things have gone wrong in the past. I need to convince them that this will work and even change people's lives, including mine. I met Chandra at the Sri Lankan nursery.
This is your land. Oh, thank you for hosting our little babies in your land.
He showed me how everything worked there. Well, tried to.
I just threw the bucket with the rope in the well.
He's my age, but he's an orphan.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry I dropped your bucket.
He has to look after his 4 siblings, but he was unemployed before. He told me that being a rubber expert was his dream. And now his dream is coming true. And now he's making my dream come true by taking care of the nursery. If the chiefs agree, then maybe there could be more people like Chandra.
It was amazing. Just for a group of 5-6 people, we have close to about 3,000 hectares already.
It looks like we're going to be planting trees at home again.
Oh yeah!
Life in London doesn't seem so disconnected now. I know that there are people out there who believe in this like I do. It's early days, but we're starting to make things better.
It's always easy to destroy things, and it's very hard to create and regenerate things. And that's what we're in, this business. It's regenerate and recreate and save the planet.
So that was the journey from London, UK, Sri Lanka, and Northeast India. And I'm going to take you to Myanmar. Over to you, Dennis. We can load the second clip, and we'll jump into the last presentation.
I journeyed from the mountains of Northeast India to the delta of Myanmar, and over the last 2 years, we've planted 2 million mangrove trees, hence creating a natural green barrier which grows very fast and can prevent winds up to 150 miles per hour, can block tsunamis or surges up to 30 meters high, and it's amazing, and it's a magical tree, and it sucks 5 times more carbon than a normal tree in the rainforest. We've planted 2 million trees. That means we are sequestering 2 million tons of CO2. Of course, we live in different ecosystems, but we are all affected by the impact of climate change. When the storm hit Louisiana, they didn't have any more mangroves. They don't have any more shields. That's why so much damage occurred. Had they left their mangroves intact, they would have prevented the storms. But it's too late. Now they need to restore the ecosystems because that's the only way they can prevent future storms from hitting them so hard.
Great. Thank you very much, Dennis. Thank you very much. So if you can load up just the homepage of Earth Bank, we will end there. So those are the kind of projects we've been working from Sri Lanka, working on agroforestry systems, to India, working on restoring cloud forest ecosystems and integrated farming with livestock, and then to Myanmar, restoring mangrove ecosystems, multiple species, both in the delta as well as in the coastline. So we've been working with local teams in these different countries. By the end of the day, financing is an issue, right? So how about using blockchain ledger technologies to measure these ecosystem service benefits, to measure these carbon stocks, to measure land that's being restored over time in real time using artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, and drone high resolution footage. Well, enter Earth Bank. These are colleagues of mine whom I've known since 2005, who've been building this platform called the Earth Bank. Basically, they are going to be the first ever digital green bank where people can raise money through crowdfunding, pick the best project they want, and these guys can then give loans and microfinance initiatives to support farmers around the world. So this is going to be launched soon. It's a prototype, and they have projects in Africa. There's one in India. They're going to expand in other countries, multiple ecosystems. But the goal is to use an Earth Saver wallet where anyone from anywhere in the world can use this as a savings bank account where you can put a bit of money, and as the trees grows, as the projects grow around the world, your money in the Earth Bank also grows. So it will be the ultimate nature's bank on the planet where people can really see their impact measured through blockchain ledger technology, choose the project where they want to go, peer-to-peer lending with farmers around the world, and it's just amazing. So it can be working in multiple countries, multiple banks, and different currencies, so on and so forth. It's being built right now, and if you want to learn more, you can go there in the website, click on sign in. This is a mangrove project in India in the Sundarbans, and they're working with a lot of farmers there. There's going to be 6 million trees that are going to be planted in the next few years, sequestering, up to 60 million tons of carbon just to start with. So imagine like 1 million people subscribing to this bank, which is online, which generates a return on investment, helps create millions of jobs around the world, rather than wait for big multilateral agencies and people out there with lots of forms to fill. Here's the power where any young people with a little bit of money who wants to make a difference through their wallet, through their little app in their phone, can do it through peer-to-peer lending, making a difference to the lives and the livelihoods of millions of people that live below the poverty line in high climate risk countries around the world. So I'm very honored to be working in partnership with a team from Earth Bank to help with microfinance and funding for amazing projects led by small whole farmers and communities around the world who are on the front line of this battle against climate change. I want to end with a quote from Eleanor Roosevelt, who says, "The future belongs to those in the beauty of their dreams." So we must all keep our dreams alive. And I'm also very grateful to Jane Goodall, who's our advisor and my inspiration for the last 20 years. And we need more people like Jane who are still going strong, even 80 plus, they never give up. I also work very closely with a young man, I say. He's 83, he's from Norway, Dr. Arne Fjordhoff. He's the leader who's implementing the project in Myanmar with the universities there, with these young people and these 250 women. And single-handedly, he's been able to pull this project together to put 9.5 million trees in the ground. And again, I'm helping him to get 1 billion trees. So there we go. We've got to raise like $1 billion in the next 10 years to execute this project. So thank you very much, guys. Over to you.
Thank you, Bremley, for that very interesting and innovative presentation. I think we got a lot of information. The downside today is that we don't have a lot of time for questions, but we'll try to make time. So whatever questions you have, quickly put it on the chat, and then we will transfer it to the screen. And I would appreciate if the speakers could check the question on the screen and go at it. If it's addressed to you, please take it. If it's not, if it's general, I'll invite someone to take over. Our team, if you can get the questions on the screen now, maybe we'll have 10 minutes for questions, a maximum 15. Thank you everyone for staying connected, even if it's going a bit over time than planned.
Yeah, I can see a question from Lucas. Hi, Lucas. So yeah, that's what we're testing right now on the field. We've got marine science students, both masters and PhD, who've got sensors to look at the penetration of saltwater intrusion from the new trees that we've planted to see if the shield is working as the mangroves grow. What's the value of that inundation of salt water into paddy fields where there's productive growth of rice, or what will happen in the future when there's so much of sea level rise? What's the amount of fish stock that is produced once the mangrove ecosystem is restored? What's the value of that per hectare per year? What's the amount of carbon stored, which is 5 times more than rainforest ecosystems? What is the resilience from storms and hurricanes and tides and tsunamis? What is the worth of that from an opportunity cost, or look at it from an insurance point of view as a flood defense, storm defense shield? And all these services added together, I know 1 hectare of mangroves produces about $200,000 of total ecosystem added benefit every year. That's a lot of money. And then coral reefs do a little more, I think $350,000 per hectare per year. But the mangrove ecosystems and the coral reefs and the seagrass are all intertwined. You restore one, you have the others. They're interconnected. So this is the beautiful part about these blue carbon projects. So right now, the project in Myanmar is validated under the VCS with the VCS standard. So that's just very carbon centric, and it's just measuring carbon. So now we're going to the next phase and look at measuring oxygen production and water in molecules and H2O production from photosynthesis. Thank you. Feel free to email me later. I'll send you the details of the measurements.
That's on the screen.
Hello.
Yes, can hear you.
Yeah. This is regarding this Singharaja landscape. Regarding question, yes, of course. Now with this SCAM project, where I work now, we are planning to develop a landscape management plan for Singharaja, which where we have included all other adjoining forests to the Singharaja complex, as well as we are looking at the private lands and state lands administered by various other organizations, the private sector as well as state authorities. And yes, we are trying to introduce private-public partnerships as a management tool. And we will really promote it, and we are even right now we are exploring the avenues and possibilities, because I mean there are some restrictions in ordinances, and the policy of course it promotes, but of course the ordinances, now we are trying to identify those as well. So anyway, now in the future, in most of the cases which are related with the protected area management, I'm sure we would be looking at the private and public sector partnerships. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Can we have the next question? Okay, sec. It's also to Mrs. Sathurusinghe.
Yeah, right now, yeah, this is happening, but we really don't know. At the moment, we really don't know what will be the impact. But of course, now the government as well as the World Bank, where again are developing some sorts of guidelines for construction workers, sort of safe guidelines, and then some sort of actions to be maintained by site managers as well. So, but this is really an uncertain situation, but we are trying our best to control the spread. Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Sathurusinghe. I think now we have a few questions for Johanna, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, Johanna, if you could take this. Can we take the next question, and when we get back her online again, we can have the questions to her. Bremley?
Like I said, all ecosystems will be supported, not just marine, terrestrial, wetlands, deserts in Africa. Any innovative project can be loaded there. So feel free to register your organization in that website. I'm just asking all my friends to put information there so that they can collect and collate the different projects, different leaders in different ecosystems in different countries, and we'll get back to you. So welcome on board.
Questions? I think we can take 5 more minutes for the questions. Okay, who is this for? Is this for Mr. Sathurusinghe? Because it says so Mr. Sathurusinghe or Bremley, Dr. Bremley, which one?
Okay.
I'm assuming since the question is from Sri Lanka.
Yes, so we have a lot of paddy farmers, you know, living by the periphery of the project site. And when Hurricane Nargis struck, you know, like 150,000 people died in the Delta region of Myanmar. So they remember very well what happened just a few years ago. So it is in their interest to protect these mangrove ecosystems. The only reason they were so poor and they became charcoal burners. And now, while working with them, we transform them from charcoal burners to mangrove restoration experts and planters and also rangers. So we've got like an army, mangrove army. We've got like a mangrove navy because they go with their little boats and plant them. And now we've got drones. So we even have a mangrove air force deployed to monitor everything from the sky.
Right. Thank you, Bremley. Any questions, Dennis? Any more that's there? Yeah, Johanna is back. So maybe we'll pass the questions to Johanna now. Johanna, if you could take this.
Yeah, I tried to answer the one before as well, but my microphone wasn't gonna unlock. Anyways, yeah. So this is a really good. Oh, sorry, that's back to the first one. So, I don't really know where the question is, but yes, EBA has been around for some time, and I guess the problem is that it's still fairly new to tourism, even though the concept itself has been around for quite some time. So there's a huge opportunity for tourism to really investigate the opportunities. So my research focused just on marine protected areas, but we heard in the other two presentations the broad variety of different ecosystem-based adaptation interventions, and clearly there would be opportunities for tourism to support different types of ecosystem-based adaptation options. So yeah, really, I do believe that there is a huge opportunity, seeing that tourism is so heavily reliant on ecosystem health and on natural attractions. And so, yeah, it should be part of, as this question or statement says, it really should be part of promoting holistic development.
Thank you, Johanna. I think that's another one for you, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. Does tourism really deliver anything?
Yeah, and I mean that's a really good question and a very big question, right? So it almost links more to my broader PhD that I'm doing, looking at how tourism can reduce climate change risk to the destination, not just to tourism businesses, but the community and the natural environment, and where the net benefits and the net costs. And I guess there is no easy answer to this question, and I guess the answer would say it depends. It really depends on how tourism is managed and how it is how it is developed. Sadly, in a lot of cases, even though tourism is always promoted to deliver a lot of benefits, in a lot of cases, if you're really looking at if you weigh up the net benefits and cost, there might even be a cost, especially if we consider climate change. I didn't really cover that because it wasn't the focus, but tourism actually contributes a lot to climate change, 8% to global greenhouse gas emissions. So if we take all of that into consideration, we really have to weigh up the benefits and the cost. And yeah, I guess it's someone like me who studies tourism and climate change risk in places like Vanuatu, a small island in the South Pacific. You know, tourism can do a lot of good things on the ground, but for tourists to even get there, they're flying, and a lot of the tourists to Vanuatu, they're long distance travelers. So really, if you're looking at it holistically, if you take into consideration all the different elements, it really becomes complex. So I think that was enough.
Thank you, Johanna. Yes, thank you very much. So I'll have a last question. I think there are a few more questions. We could send it to our speakers and get answers for you later because we don't have a lot of time left. As a final question to all of you, in 60 seconds maybe, if you could tell me what is the best lesson that you've learned in all the work you've done in biodiversity restoration, and what we need to do to ensure that we have higher success rates in addressing climate change and biodiversity conservation. So in 60 seconds, so that means three minutes altogether. So shall we start with Bremley and then we go to Johanna and Mr. Sathurusinghe?
Yeah, we are restoring our sacred forests, our sacred groves that are more than 1,000 years old that are being maintained by my clan. And it's very important to document this indigenous knowledge that would be lost forever if we don't learn from them. We're also learning how to grow bridges again. So living root bridges is an ancient art that we practice for like thousands of years. Living root bridges exist in our home, and they're just like an avatar. So that's a sustainable living architecture that our ancestors have been practicing for thousands of years. And we need to learn that art and maintain that art, which is building bridges for 7 generations ahead. So indigenous knowledge and documentation of species before they are wild, and learning from your grandparents or great-grandparents is very important. Thank you.
Thank you. Johanna, would you like to respond?
Sure. I really like that on traditional knowledge, because in Vanuatu, traditional knowledge is also very, very big. But yeah, so my learnings would probably be really the importance to look at those complex problems and issues from a holistic perspective. And that's something that is often not done, especially in tourism and the private sector. People are very much focused on what happens to their business, to their property, to their building. But if we are wanting to address climate change or biodiversity, big complex problems, we really need to take a more holistic view and consider, for me, different elements within the destination, but also the views of a variety of stakeholders to understand the trade-offs that are created through the interventions that we're proposing.
Thank you, Johanna. Mrs. Sathurusinghe. Yeah, if you could add your closing remarks. I'm not sure whether your mic is on. I think it's not on, the mic.
Right. Thank you very much. And also, I really agree with 2 other presenters what they said. But from the local experience, what I have to say is, restoration is really a challenge to us in Sri Lanka, because it's not like just establishing commercial plantations which have been doing by the forest department for years and years. Now we are working with the native species, and we really don't know the silviculture of all these, how the seeds are germinated and all these things, especially in the case of forest department. So, and also we have to keep in mind that we are working with the really infertile soil. And they had been used for years and years for various agricultural purposes and all other these things, and they are really degraded. And species size site species matching is really important. And also you have to look at the approach, technical approach, like what sort of vehicle you are using, the private sector or the community, and also the government, 100% government involvement and all these things. So you have to look at all these angles, because now there's a good opportunities. One methodology developed by UC, and that is restoration opportunity assessment methodology, which has been highly used right now in the forest department in the Sri Lanka. So, which gives you a lot of opportunities to identify what to be planted, what sort of approaches to be looked for, and whether it's going to be the community or the thing, and also how to select your plant composition and various other things. And finally, maintenance is also very important. Like you have to maintain because they are established in very harsh conditions, and most of the cases it's far away from the villages or the community ground where you get at least the community to work on the site. So there are a lot of issues and a lot of changes, but of course. Right now, there are successful stories, but of course, you have to learn by doing. The department is learning by doing right now. But of course, as Bremley correctly said, there are a lot to do in a situation like in Sri Lanka. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. It was a longer webinar than we initially planned, but we are grateful that we had a good participation both on the webinar and also on Facebook Live, and we got questions from Twitter, so there's a big engagement from all sorts of social media as well. And a big thank you to our speakers for their time, the efforts taken to make the presentations, highly appreciating your contribution. So this is me saying bye to you until we meet for another webinar. Thank you very much, and bye for now. Have a nice evening.
Thank you very much.
Morning.
Bye.
Yeah.
Take care.
Bye.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
Thank you.
May the forest be with you.